Welcome, and thanks for joining me for this episode. And if we could begin just checking in with the body. Just become aware of the body, how it feels. And the body can become a useful anchor into the present moment. And you can become aware of the inner energy stream within the body, the life energy. And if you don't know what is meant by this, you can close your eyes and just hold your hands out in front of you, and you can ask yourself the question of, how do I know my hands are there? Which may sound a bit strange, but and see if you can feel your hands. And it's not the hands you are sensing there, it's a life energy that is permeating within your hands, that permeates within the body. It's almost a tingling sensation, an aliveness, and it's most easily accessible within the hands and feet, but gradually as you deepen with this awareness of the body, almost the whole body becomes alive, and you can feel the aliveness there. And by feeling the aliveness in a body, you are no longer thinking. It's a useful anchor if you want direct access to the present moment. You can always access the body in this way. It can be useful when in a conversation you would like to be present, or perhaps in a way shielded from another person. If it's an intense conversation, then anchors such as going into the body can be quite powerful in allowing you to just observe what is being said without reacting to it. It's almost an allowing. When you are present and when you are in that place of spaciousness, there's enough space for somebody to talk in this way. I was having a thought not too long ago while I was laying in bed. Can't quite remember if it was morning before waking up, getting up, or if it was just before going to sleep, but an image of a train, me being on a train, and then the scenery passing by of the train, and just in that moment there was the thought of how life is, how life is being passed by in this way. Perhaps, time, you're moving away, you're always moving past things, and everything's changing so quickly, and then there was a realization that it wasn't the train moving past the scenery, it was the scenery moving past the train. That the train itself was not moving, it was completely still, and it was life in this way, moving and changing around us. It can seem like, in one sense, that we are moving through life, passing by things, and we are on this train of life, and we're continuously going, but really we're not going anywhere. In a strange way, we are simply here in the moment, and it is everything else that is dynamically changing. But there is all this still stable place of who you are that is unchanging, that is unaffected by life in this way. That's not to say you don't experience the impact of life, but the awareness itself is not affected. It's not influenced. It doesn't change under the external impact or pressures. The awareness is always the same. And when you are, if you have taken the position of the train moving through life, then it can almost seem like life is running out, or how much of life do you have left? And you can there's almost a natural looking back on the past of where you've been, perhaps missing it. We're trying to look out the windows and trying to hold on to moments, not wanting life to pass by in this way. But when you realize the train is not moving, then there's nothing to hold on to. There's just an acceptance, an allowing of life to be as life is. For instance, our bodies are like the scenery that's passing by. It's always changing. The body is always changing. It's going to be getting older, and at some point it will dissolve. But the train is still. It remains still, stable in its own awareness. And acknowledging this still place, the mind almost reflects this as well. As you're not generating, you're not operating from the mind. The mind becomes secondary. And you may notice then that it's your consciousness that influences the mind, that informs the mind, And what comes out of the mind is the contents of your awareness that filters through in things you say or how you behave. And it's not just a scary mind trying to protect itself from the scary world that feels as if it's imposing or attacking in every direction. Instead of being a leaf in the wind, trying to fight the forces, and it seems as if there is no rootedness here, no stability. Everything is almost trying to keep balance in this way, and it can be seen by those around you, where one moment they're ecstatically happy, the next moment perhaps they are deeply saddened. And we've just seen, a sporting event, the Euros, and it was almost a clear example of this as well, of people being almost engrossed in the mind in this way, identified with the mind. Being ecstatic at one moment that the team has won, and then devastated that, it's not gone their way. And again, there's nothing wrong with watching this, but it's almost an acknowledgement of what it's like to be completely identified with the mind. In this way, they've almost adopted the identity of a name for a piece of land in this way. An identity of this is who we are and this is who they are. And there's an absolute, what can seem like an absolute importance of winning this, identifying with this team and this name of a country, and this is who I am, and this is all there is, and feeling every moment of winning or losing or being identified. And it's very different from perhaps another person watching the same event, enjoying it in the same way, but being aware of their true nature while watching, well, not entirely losing oneself in this, and being like the leaf in the wind, being vulnerable in this way, where you're allowing the external to dictate, to decide how, if you're going to be happy or sad, or hoping an external event will make you happy. And even if the country you were supporting won this tournament, how long would that happiness last? Maybe even a few days afterwards, you may see someone who was ecstatically happy when that team won, and then a few days later you're seeing them, and perhaps there's no sign of that happiness anymore. It's almost like it doesn't exist. It's gone. where they are seeking happiness from something else. Perhaps they're looking forward to another sporting event coming up, and they're waiting for that temporary happiness to arrive. So for those people around you, whether people you know or don't know, and you can almost use that as almost a teaching, where you're not judging somebody who you can clearly see that they are identified with mind, that there may not be much space there, but you can use it as a teaching. You can acknowledge it within yourself that I see this now. Or a conversation in a cafe, two people talking, and you can see it's two minds engaging. You may notice no space there, just one mind reacting to the other mind, and a conversation going back and forth. And you can always smile at this acknowledgement, and notice the space that it is seen from. And it's just an acknowledgement of the nature of ego, the nature of mind. And this football tournament is just another example of using what's around you as a teaching. And for me it was incredibly clear, seeing people and people's reactions to this. It's a great teaching. So picking up where we left off with A New Earth by Eckhart Tolle, and this episode I'm going to read from the passage The Background, Unhappiness. The ego creates separation, and separation creates suffering. The ego is therefore clearly pathological. Apart from the obvious ones such as anger, hatred, and so on, there are other more subtle forms of negativity that are so common they are usually not recognized as such. For example, impatience, irritation, nervousness, and being fed up. They constitute the background unhappiness that is many people's predominant inner state. You need to be extremely alert and absolutely present to be able to detect them. Whenever you do, it is a moment of awakening, of disidentification from the mind. Here is one of the most common negative states that is easily overlooked, precisely because it is so common, so normal. You may be familiar with it. Do you often experience a feeling of discontent that could best be described as a kind of background resentment? It may be either specific or non-specific. Many people spend a large part of their lives in that state. They are so identified with it that they cannot stand back and see it. Underlying that feeling are certain unconsciously held beliefs, that is to say, thoughts. You think these thoughts in the same way that you dream your dreams when you are asleep. In other words, you don't know you are thinking those thoughts, just as the dreamer doesn't know he is dreaming. Here are some of the most common unconscious thoughts that feed the feeling of discontent or background resentment. I have stripped away the content from those thoughts so that the bare structure remains. They become more clearly visible that way. Whenever there is unhappiness in the background of your life, or even in the foreground, you can see which of these thoughts applies and fill in your own content according to your personal situation. There is something that needs to happen in my life before I can be at peace, happy, fulfilled, etc. And I resent that it hasn't happened yet. Maybe my resentment will finally make it happen. So that's the first thought that Eckhart gives here, and I will read out the following common thoughts, and I'll try and leave a little space between them just to delineate the separation of the common thoughts. So here we go. Something happened in the past that should not have happened, and I resent that. If that hadn't happened, I would be at peace now. Something is happening now that should not be happening, and it is preventing me from being at peace now. Often the unconscious beliefs are directed toward a person, and so happening becomes doing. You should do this or that, so that I can be at peace. And I resent that you haven't done it yet. Maybe my resentment will make you do it. Something you or I did, said, or failed to do in the past is preventing me from being at peace now. What you are doing or failing to do now is preventing me from being at peace. And that's the end of the passage there. And it might be useful to revisit these thoughts that Eckhart has listed, where he's almost stripped away the personal content and given the bare structure, the bones of the thought. And of course we have our own personal situation and scenario that these thoughts emerge from, and it may not be clear to kind of apply this to ourselves until you almost sit with the thought for a moment and allow it to absorb and to dial into that, and perhaps you can understand in your life when these thoughts are coming up, or become aware that, oh, this is one of those thoughts there that really, it's me being, discontent or bored or unhappy about a situation. And you can recognize it as an almost egoic thought, a thought from that imaginary self that feels it is separate from all. So I'm just going to run through them again very quickly. So the first one is, there is something that needs to happen in my life before I can be at peace, happy, fulfilled, etc. And I resent that it hasn't happened yet. Maybe my resentment will finally make it happen. So this is a thought about the future, that something needs to be added to life for happiness to finally arrive. And we can almost go back to that train example as well, where it feels in the egoic mind you need to get somewhere, something needs to happen, train needs to reach this destination, and it's not happening. It's not happened as of yet, and it's not happening fast enough. And there's the belief that if you resent it, that resentment will finally make it happen, that you'll be deserving of it. And the next one. Something happened in the past that should not have happened, and I resent that. If that hadn't happened, I would be at peace now. So now it's a thought about the past, a story of the past, a story of why happiness is not accessible in this moment. This is why I'm not happy. And you may know someone in your life, and it may be, you may notice in yourself this has happened. Doesn't matter how complex the narrative or life situation there is, it comes down to this the bare bones of this thought, the essence of the thought, that where there's a story of something that shouldn't have happened. And it's almost as if the story is the lens in your glasses, so you're seeing life through this story. So you're not seeing life as it is in this moment. There is this heavy story, thoughts and unpleasant emotions, and this is how life can be lived. Or for a lot of people, how life is being lived in this way. Something is happening now that should not be happening, and it is preventing me from being at peace now. And this one it seems it's more of a difficult one to detect, because in that moment of happening, that unpleasantness there, often you can be so engrossed in that moment, so identified that something is happening to you in this moment that shouldn't be happening, and all space can quickly be lost. And the only thing that's there is the injustice of that happening now, that shouldn't have happened to me. Which can sound in some ways insane, because it's already happened. But you're living from a place of, well, it shouldn't have happened. And it's not just for a few minutes or a few days where you're processing this. It's, it's months, it's a few years, and even for some, a few decades of this story. Or I guess in this in this example, you're dealing with the situation in the moment, so perhaps this could be transferred to another thought. There's something happening now may evolve into just something happened in the past. It shouldn't be happening. And Eckhart says, there's a bit of commentary between the thoughts he gives here that says, often the unconscious beliefs, so unconscious meaning what you're not readily aware, deep-seated beliefs are directed towards a person, and so happening becomes doing. Got a few more just to finish off here. You should do this or that so that I can be at peace, and I resent that you haven't done it yet. Maybe my resentment will make you do it. So, relying on external situations for happiness. And even if this person was to do what you wanted them to do and peace came, it would only be for a temporary moment before, perhaps in this pattern of thought, you need them to do something else now, or you need another person to do something in order for you to get peace, and it's almost an ongoing struggle to organize peace in your life. That can only be done by other people doing what you need them to do. And the next one, something you or I did, said or failed to do in the past is preventing me from being at peace now. So it's almost, this one is similar to one of the earlier thoughts about something happened in the past that shouldn't have happened. And the final one, what you are doing or failing to do now is preventing me from being at peace. So something not going your way in regards to expectations. So the mind having an expectation or a thought that this should be going, life should be going a particular way. And again, it reminds me of the leaf blowing in the wind. And it's having an expectation that it should be going this way, not this way. And that pattern, that thought is deeply ingrained about everything, about whether it's meeting someone, then they should be nice to me. It's such a natural thought to have, and that thought can be so close where you believe it to be true. That belief covers everything up. It's like, well, that person. But if you are rooted in your awareness, and you meet this person who is not, not pleasant to you in this way, then of course, there may be a reaction that you may feel the impact of that, but you're not suffering in that same way. You're not holding on to the thought of, well, that person should have been nice to me, really. And that itself has its own feeling and reaction to that. But you are just simply being aware of the now. Oh, okay. That person, perhaps I don't need to interact with that person, and you're gone. That's it. And the residue of that moment it doesn't imprint on you in that same way as if being in the mind, you react to that. That person wasn't nice to me. And then you can imagine at the end of the day, it's there with you still. You've carried it in your rucksack for the whole day. And then when the loved one asks how your day was, you would tell them about it, and then and that person in that particular place wasn't nice to me, and then you're reliving it again, and you can almost see the result of this, the suffering involved. So I think I'm going to leave it here at this passage. It'd be good to leave us with these thoughts we've gone through, the common thoughts, and perhaps it's something for today. You can notice if any of these thoughts are arising within you. If you notice the discontent or unhappiness, and Eckhart mentioned it's almost a background thought that may not necessarily be at the front and center, but the common subtleness of impatience or irritation or nervousness, and perhaps you can bring the alertness that Eckhart says is needed for this, the presence to detect them. And whenever you do notice these thoughts, there it is, as Eckhart says, a moment of awakening, of disidentification from the mind. Thank you for joining me for this episode. I wish you well in this moment, and we will speak again very soon. Take care.